That leadership we needed of courage and vision and commitment, I'll take some time to tell you about him in a very humble but honorable way. My dad, born and raised on the island of Oahu in a place called Alewa, his mom and dad were poor. And he don't talk about his early childhood days, but his older brother, Uncle Sonny, would. And they in Hawaii back then, no child went hungry. There was no such thing as homeless. That if a child needed to be fed or needed a place to stay, families would take them in. So we call it the system of Hanai, where you adopt. And my Uncle Sonny would say, yeah, we come home from school, and there could be 12 children in our house. We don't know their names, but they're brothers and sisters to you. And he says, yeah, we watch mom and dad after dinner. If all they had for dinner was water, then we know tomorrow you're going to eat guava when you go to school because there'll be no food. That time with my father, who was amongst the children that needed society the most, that was supported the least, was hugely impactful. The other impact, on December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor was bombed. He was a junior in high school, and he was playing a football game on the island of Maui, and the military handed the football team machine guns, put them on the beach, because they thought the Japanese were going to invade. They didn't even know how to shoot those guns. The population of Hawaii was very small, then everybody knew each other. He was too young to get into the military, but his father said, you go fight for this land, and you go fight for freedom, and if you make shame, no come home. Stuff like that. My dad don't talk about it, but his best friend in war from Oklahoma tells me the story when he comes to my house, and I would badger him when I was a kid. Tell me the stories. And he says, your dad, man of courage, got somehow to Washington State and enlisted in the Army in the infantry. And this is what I was told. I'm just telling you what I was told. Thought he was Native American Indian, make him first scout. Too young to be at war, but he landed at Normandy on the European invasion. Made it across those bloody beaches where many did not. Fought 400 miles across French soil. Being a first scout in the front lines, on average you last 2 minutes in battle. In the wintertime in green fatigues, 1 mile from the German border, a German sniper shot him in the head, right below the temple, and went through his left eye, came out his nose. The guy from Oklahoma tells me the story. On the front lines, they had limited medical supplies, and had different piles of wounded. Those who had a chance and those who most likely didn't have a chance because their wounds were so severe. The medical supplies in the front lines went to those who had the best chance. The guy from Oklahoma said, your father was of great courage, he deserved more. Put him on a cot with another man, carried him out. I don't know his name. The other man stepped on a landmine, was killed. Shrapnel went into my dad's body, too close to internal organs, never operated on. And it took him back to behind the lines, got him to a New York hospital. He didn't die, but he was a man of courage. And in the New York hospital, that's when my dad starts to talk. They said, yeah, I know. They bandaged both eyes to try to save the left eye. And they said, in the blackness of the bandage is when I understood the power of vision. Understanding the responsibility of knowing where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. And making decisions on that with crystal clear clarity. And my father said, in the bandage, I debated so many issues, but in the end, his decision about where he's going to go, what he's supposed to do, was very simple. He said, you go home. You go home to your dirt. You go home to your land. And you take care of poor children. Then my dad started to navigate his personal educational journey to do that. His surgeon got him into Colby College, where he got his degree in social work, and then he came back home. His journey was really through improving the social conditions of Native Hawaiians and to help poor kids. When we lost Eddie, we were the poor kids. He comes to me sitting, hiding in my yard at a house I rented, and put his hand on my shoulder, wouldn't look into my eyes, because he knows the eyes of how they look when they feel shame. And he said, in that night, he said, Mom and Dad, I've been talking to Mom, and we both agree, we know you're going to go. Then they said, we'll be there when you let go the lines, and we'll be there when you arrive. And then he said, but you don't know how to do this. And he said, I want you to get your leadership all in one room tomorrow. Get it in one room tomorrow. We met at the biomedical building someplace in the University of Hawaii, some room I choose to almost forget. We got together, and this was the most extraordinary time with my father that I ever seen his power. In 45 minutes, he shifted all of us. He pulled us together. And he said it in the most extraordinary way. And he said, you folks, if you're going to go to Tahiti, you need to know the power of vision. And you need to see what success looks like. And he says, you need to know that journey. You need to know what the steps are. And then he said a very interesting thing. He said, along the journey, you need to know who you serve, because this voyage is not about you. And then he said, this leadership group is broken. Then he said, if you're going to lead, you got to come together. And he said, what will bring you together? The things that divide you, like Ma was saying, the things that divide you, put it aside. Figure out what you can agree on. What are those core values that you can agree on? And those values, you need to hold them. It will hold you together. And he said, those core values, you can never compromise them. It'll hold you together. And then he said, that leadership, if you're going to lead, the only way you're going to be able to do this is that to be successful is that you got to bring your community behind you. And he said, go to your community, articulate your vision, articulate your values. And if it makes sense to them, they'll be with you. You will do nothing without your community. And then he said some very interesting things. He says, but don't ever define this community by the things that would separate you, like race. Don't ever define this community by things that would separate you by geography. He said, define your community by those who want to learn, those who want to work hard, those who want to come here and support, and those who want to share. Go to them, and they'll be with you. Then he said the hard part, the piece that was most missing. He says, this voyage is not something you take, it's something you earn. He said, do not talk about a departure date. You talk about what it takes to earn the voyage. I want you to write a list for me. Everything that you need to do, everything you need to learn before you go. He said 95% of the success of the voyage to get to Tahiti will be accomplished in the preparation and the training. Don't talk about departure. Do all those steps. I'm going to hold you to them. You can see my dad, who was not an ocean person, really was beginning and emerging, certainly for me, as our greatest navigator. And he was such an extraordinary teacher because he led from behind, hold leadership accountable. And we did train. It was an extraordinary journey. Then he said, at the end of the training, you're going to have to make one single decision. And he said, at the end of the training, when you're ready to go, is the voyage worth the risk? And I really think my dad was saying that to his son because he knew his son was going to go and that maybe his son wouldn't come back. And, but it was a statement of being courageous and being able to risk it all for the things that are worth it. And my dad was extraordinary. He says, carry your culture. People need it. And I've been thinking about this story about him in the context of how you moved me this morning. When I was 11 years old, I remember that age because I was the same age as one of my dad's cases. He was a social worker at the Salvation Army. And there was a boy by the name of Sam that was one of his caseworkers. Strong Hawaiian boy, big. Strong enough to lift up the street's manhole. And one day he put 2 young children inside the manhole, closed the manhole, and didn't tell anybody. Luckily, those 2 children were found. Sam was a beaten and abused child. He was strong, and he was angry. I was home in our dining room area, his little window into the kitchen, 11 years old, and I remember my dad coming into the kitchen. It was early evening, and he was crying. First time I ever seen my dad cry. My mother hugs him, and I remember him saying to my mom while she was holding him, Sam killed himself today. Then he said, I knew he was going to do it, and I couldn't do anything about it. Those words, even though my father was never taught culture, even though my father wasn't taught the language, even though my father wasn't an ocean man, he sat through systems of rehabilitation of Native Hawaiians, millions of dollars thrown in, that weren't working. Statistics weren't changing. Something was missing, something that was deeper than that, all of that, and that was being that issue, that chronic problem of the issue that we tend to underestimate, at least in Hawaii, the issue of being inferior, the issue of being lonely, and the issue of not feeling good about yourself. And this photo signifies, my dad said, carry your culture, your people need it. It comes from those children like Sam, and we can't lose them anymore. And then my dad said it just so clearly, this voyage is not for you. It's for children not born. You will succeed at the voyage when the stories of this voyage still make children proud that are not even born today. Sail for your children. And that sense of clarity, that sense of purpose was unifying, brought us together. We left that room ready to go, ready to work. Our job was to train. Problem. We get in the parking lot. My dad pulls me on the side. He goes, hey, you want to navigate? Where's your teacher? Mau Piailu. Remember he said, don't look for me, you'll never find me? My dad said, he don't come, you don't go. Get on a plane, go talk to him. Mary said he couldn't find me. I did. I found him on an atoll. I didn't find him. He let me find him. We sat down on a white sand beach on a driftwood log. Mao, out of his great genius and strength and courage, the thing that was I learned about him that was the most powerful of all of him, his sense of duty to compassion. And that his head was low. He heard about the story of Eddie. And I just went up to Mao and said, Mao, we need you. And Mao, Mao just said, we'll see. Like Tebaki, no commitment. I said, we need you, Mao, not to find Tahiti. We need you to help us find it for ourselves. Then he just said, I'll see, we'll see. I couldn't convince him. I flew home and I flew on back to Hawaii without the commitment. got back home, Mao don't come, we don't go. Thrown back into trauma, about 2 months later, I received a phone call from his son Henry in Saipan saying that Mao's going to be at your house tomorrow. You got the world's greatest navigator moving with me. I got 1 bedroom. I'm a commercial fisherman. I never washed my clothes. I had so little food. And Mao came. He lasted about 3 days, moved out, moved in with my mom and dad. And then he took us by the hand like children. Through a window of time. To a window that only he could find. And a place that only he could take us. Into the old ways. The deep sea. The road. And be assured it wasn't just me, it was all of us. And he was extraordinary. And he was powerful. And in this road we found out many things. We learned that on the canoe that you're not crew after time. We trained 3,000 miles of sailing in just local waters over 2.5 years of training. That over time, what governs what happens on the canoe when you're ready to go is not that you are a good crew, but that you're a good family. That what defines behavior and conduct on the voyaging canoe is how you treat family. And that the canoe itself it's not a canoe, it's a school, because we had so much to relearn. And but we had Mao, we had time, we had my dad. Make a long story short, we left on a voyage in 1980, and it was led by those from Hawaii, navigated by those from Hawaii. Mao was on board. I will say that Mao you know, he, I'll tell you a story. A senator from Saipan, while he was there at my house, my mom's house, flew into Hawaii. I picked him up at the airport, brought him down. He stayed for the weekend. And then on Sunday, and nobody told me a word, I had no idea what was going on, he says, "Oh, Mao, go pack your bag." It's the senator telling him to pack his bag. And I was confused. And I said, "Why?" He says, "Oh, because Mao's going home." Mao was afraid to fly on airplanes. So the senator had to come to escort him. But nobody told me he was going home. It was predetermined. Mao was not going to sail with us. He was afraid of us. And that the senator came to pick him up. So, okay. So I pack his bag. We go to the airport. And we check in really early. And then Mao, because he just was so uncomfortable, said, "Let's go to the bar." So we went to the bar for a little while, and getting close to departure time, and I told Mao, "You got to go to the gate." He says, "No." And I said, "Okay." And then we get really close to the departure time. When you miss your flight, and Mao said, Mao, you got to go. And he stands up, okay. He goes, "You, to the senator, you go to the gate, catch a plane. Now I know what, you take me home." And so we went back home, and that was an extraordinary time for me because he trusted us. He trusted us. And so he went on this voyage, and we had an extraordinary voyage. He was there to make sure we didn't make large mistakes. We went down to Tahiti, and we came back. And I know time's really short, so I got plenty more slides, but I think I'll probably end it. So when Mao got back home to my mom's house, he was packing his bag to go home for the first time in over 2.5 years. Never went home once. Stayed with us the whole time. And Mao, my mom had this nagging question, goes into the bedroom when he was packing his bag and says, "Hey, Ma, I got to ask you this question. I want to know why you came back to teach Nainoa when you said you'd never come back to Hawaii." And Mao said, "Nainoa come look for me. He asked me to come teach. If I don't teach, I know he's going to go. Maybe he die." And so when I say I'm honored and I'm humbled to come before you, all of you collectively, powerful in this room. You can understand why it is out of being able to have the privilege to talk about my great teachers. Because all of our teachers stayed with us the whole way, like Mao. And I have a lot of slides left, but maybe because of time, I should end here. After 1980, we were able to sail about 130,000 nautical miles. That's like in the Pacific. That'd be equivalent to going around the world 6 times because of our teachers. And we had extraordinary experiences, even here in British Columbia in '95, in Alaska, to New Zealand. And we built a voyaging canoe for Mao back in 2000, 2005. We took a gift back to his islands because they're forgetting in Micronesia. And that has spawned on from in year 2000. Mao came to come teach us again, and he said, usually he'll fly here, we'll talk till like 2 or 3 in the morning, and the things that are really most important to him, they'll be articulated in the early morning, and he'll say, and before that, for almost 25 years, he's chronically been talking about the problem of people forgetting that the systems of education in Micronesia are broken because they take their elementary school kids, move them to other islands, and those islands don't have navigators. Mao is one of 6 masters. He's the youngest, and he's the last. We all knew it. And Mao, year 2000 comes, and he says, at 3 o'clock in the morning, he goes, you know, Nainoa, I'm too old. My children have too much to learn, and it's too late. And I'm feeling the welling up of knowing extinction again at your dinner table, sitting there. And then like the great navigator, your job is to get out of the storm. About 20 minutes later, Mao goes, but it's okay. When they put me in the ground, meaning after he passes away, I plant the seed. I put the seed in Hawaii. The seed is his students. None of us are master navigators, not by a long shot. We're just probably could be best defined as being good students. But he put the seed in Hawaii. I put it in the ground, let the tree grow. And when my people want to know, they can come to Hawaii and know about me. And so that obligation by his students is known very well. Let me end this presentation with one of his teachings, and arguably maybe my most important. When we lost Eddie, when we went to get Mao, when Mao came back, he started the journey of voyaging. My father said, don't talk about departure time. Just go train, prepare. All those factors led up. In the beginning, when there was no accountability, because you didn't have to go on the voyage, everything was easy. Everything was easy because the learning was really free, and you didn't have to worry about having to take the step, having to take the journey. Because in the journey is the risk of failure. And that's the piece that scared me the most, was having to take the journey at the risk of failure. And so we trained, and it was we were going to leave in 1980, and it was in November of '79 when the captain said to my dad, the crew is ready and the canoe is ready. We're going to go in March. That very day that you set the date, I fell apart. Being the student of the navigation, my job, all of a sudden, I'm going to have to go do this. And so it was that power of the vision and the excitement of the journey, but the fear of failing. It's like that fear is like a door that as long as there's no date, you can keep that door closed. You don't have to open it up. But once you opened it up, you open the door and you see yourself. And that fear of failing made me fall apart. Mao was watching me. A couple weeks later, Mao is worried that his student is losing it, that his student's not going to make it. He has all the training, he has all the information, he has all the experience, but he's lacking courage. He's too afraid of failing. So it was maybe first week in December, Mao says, "No, drive me to a place called Lanai Lookout." It's a place on the eastern side of the island. Mao had picked 14 different sites of navigation where he trained from. This particular site was looking on this rock wall out to the ocean. You're about maybe 80 feet above the ground, and it looks out to the sunrise. And sunrises and sunsets are the most important times on a navigator to do many things, but one is to read the signs of nature to tell you, to predict weather. And so when the light's low coming through the horizon, it changes the colors of clouds, and you can see the wind in the clouds, you can see rain and so forth. We're taught the old way. And Lanai Lookout was also a place to study the stars. Went to Lanai Lookout, and I am looking for the magic. I'm so afraid of failure that I want you, Mao, to guarantee me success. Guarantee that I'm going to find Tahiti. This man was of magic, and I'm ordinary. I want you to make sure you guarantee success. I want the magic. Where is it? And he takes me to Lanai Lookout. We get out of the car. It's an afternoon sunset time. The sun's going down, and we wait until the first stars come out, the bright stars. And then Mao turns to me and goes, "Okay, Nainoa, show me the star compass." The traditional star compass is like kindergarten, first day, 101. That's the first thing we did. That's not the magic. But he's asking me to go back to the first day, so I recite the 32 houses of the stars. Then he goes, "Okay, show me the star house of Tahiti." So I show him the star house of Tahiti. That's like second day. This is not the magic. And so I point to the star house of Tahiti. This is not, the second day is magic, and it's not the magic. And then he says, after I point to Tahiti, he goes, "Okay, good." He knows I know the star compass. He knows I know where Tahiti is, but he's saying it's good. Then he asks the question, "Can you see the island?" Tahiti is 2,300 miles away. He knows, I know, you can't see the land. But I didn't think no was the answer, so I waited, kind of contemplating what to say. Mao gets frustrated and he goes, "Can you see the island?" Pushing me. And I turned to my teacher and I said, "Mao, I can see the image of the island in my mind." Then he said, "Okay, good. Get in the car, take me home." Even though we were 4 months out of the voyage, he never talked to me once after that. I took him home, dropped me off. He stayed in his bedroom in my mom's house. He took folder papers like that and kept writing in English over and over again, practicing. And he was training in things that was completely his. He divorced me. I was falling apart. And because I didn't get the magic, and then he kept pushing me away. He wouldn't give me any other lessons. And then when it was time to go, in Hilo, it was just torrential rain. It was just raining and raining and raining. And we had 5 days we had to wait for the rain. I was hoping it would never stop. And the funniest thing happened when it cleared, we had to go. When we got outside the breakwater of Hilo, I don't know what it was. Once we took the step of courage, and once we went to sea, once we got outside the breakwater, I don't know what it was, but everything, that pressure of failure, for some reason, left. And we went out to sea, and navigators like Mao, they'll stay up 22, 23 hours a day because you got to watch nature. You got to make like 3,000 observations of nature. You got to make like 300 choices about what you're going to do in the canoe, steering, sailing, setting, moving weight, trim. Then you got to make 2 decisions a day. And that's all on where are you? Where's your position, sunrise and sunset? We got outside there, and I was thinking, I can never be like Mao. I need my 8 hours. And I'll just do my best. And I laid down and under the cloud canopy of Hilo at 10 o'clock, thinking I need to get rest. And I laid there for about 10 minutes, and I got up and said, you must be the stupidest person on the planet Earth, because it was just so exciting. And we got back up on the deck, and we just stayed up. But that night, we traveled underneath the canopy of clouds, and there was the scorpion rising in the southeast, right on the bow of the canoe. We were on course to Tahiti. And in Hawaiian terms, we call it Kamakau Nui o Maui, the great fishhook of Maui. And we named that for Eddie, because Eddie would use, because in the mythology, Maui pulled all the islands in the Pacific out of the sea. So it was Eddie pulling Tahiti out of the sea. That was Eddie in the sky. And what it was at the end of the voyage, I finally, in hindsight, recognized that seeing the island, having that clear vision of the destination, what Mao said on the rocks of that at Lanai Lookout, he said, when you see the island, he said, when I said, I see the image of the island in my mind, Mao said, good. Make sure you keep the image of the island in your mind, because if you forget that image, you'll be lost. And I didn't understand that at first. But it was through the challenge that doing the navigation the way it's done traditionally, you can't do it. It's too hard. But it's when, for your personal self, but it's when you keep the purpose of what you're doing, when you're clear about who you serve, knowing that you're helping children that are not even born yet, that keeping that vision of the island in your mind was what would allow, it would be the difference between whether Nainoa would succeed or he would fail in Mao's mind. That making sure that the purpose is so great and so important that you just, no matter whether you believe you can do it or not, you need to get it done. And having said that, keeping the image of the island in your mind, that's the story that was so like gravity this morning, being with you in this room during the procession, during the speaking, understanding the gravity of what's before you. And I have no ability in any way to understand what the decision should be. But you're at the table. A decision needs to be made. And having to be a part of what I envy, of you all in the same room. Wow. And having a table to speak from. That's powerful. And having said all of that, I'm extraordinarily humbled to be here. I thank you so much for your enormously precious time that you have. I wish you all my aloha and all my best wishes, and whatever decision you make for the children not born, it is going to be historic. And I can look back and I'll smile when I go home and know I was there. I was there. And if you give me permission, I'll share that story of unity and strength and beauty and courage that's in this room. And having seen it, it makes me stronger, makes me more courageous. And it's a story that my people need to hear. So with that, I deeply, deeply, deeply thank you for letting me be here. Aloha.